Okay.
So what is the issue that we're starting with that we're going to be sort of round table?
Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that right now.
Okay.
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 So Wing It Podcast, goosedigital.com, episode 75. Who do we have?
Robin Kroll.
Chris O'Neill.
Jen Pugsley.
Michael Turksani. Not actually episode 75, but we're doing a new format. So that's why we've just threw the number out there today. We're going with more of a conversation approach, which I personally like. Listening to a lot of the podcasts that I follow, they're really more discussions than they are organized presentations almost, which tend to be, I think, our podcasts kind of fall into that category. Now, our podcasts are not typically planned, to say the least. That's the whole mantra behind Wing It, but they're reasonably structured, I guess, is how we've been doing them. So this is going to be one where it's not only is it unplanned, it's unstructured.
Right.
So we're going to see how this goes.
Robin is very cautious right now. She doesn't like unplanned or unstructured.
I'm ready to go with the flow. I'm good.
All right.
Okay,
Robin. Yes.
So you guys wanted to talk about, well, why don't you guys say it? We
want to talk about digital thought leadership.
Okay.
And
digital thought leadership or thought leadership distributed through digital mediums?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the latter.
Okay.
That's what we want to talk about. And we want to talk about how necessary is it. We want to align it to the insurance industry. So we want to talk about price because we know that's a big thing. Mm-hmm. But we want to talk about some trends that we're seeing our brokers take with this digital thought leadership and some of the things that we're seeing successful from a lead gen front that, were kind of different than a year and a half ago. And that's what,
And I think maybe the sort of the flip side or the other side of that is talking about it from the lens of in an industry where a lot of people view the products as being a commodity. So it's really the same. How does the end consumer figure out, which brand that they're interested in, which brand they want to align themselves with? What are some of the factors that they consider when they choose to work with a broker or with a particular insurance company? And I think that's a part of it. So if the bigger question is, how do they make that decision? Then, the thought leadership and how that is actually shared through digital, that is one of the factors that they can use to make their decision. So I don't know if that's another lens or it's sort of a side
part
of
it.
that, part of it.
But most of it comes down to what's going to actually drive more revenue. So, when we sort of see the trends that have been taking place and that are evident in sort of retail and sort of, the consumer marketplace, and we see how that has slowly been sort of dribbling over to B2B. And, we certainly get a view of what could be happening in B2B by the way that consumers are sort of leaning, and we see how where purchases are now largely sort of evaluated online. They are evaluated through the content that is being published, and where insurance maybe hasn't been sort of first to the post when it comes to sort of that digital play. We are now seeing more and more how the consumer is basically dictating, hey, we'll pay a little bit more or even substantially more for an organization that basically matches up with my values, my
Sure.
lifestyle, whatever the case may be. And so I think more and more you're going to see, the investments being made in that digital story being told online, so that the consumer that's targeted is actually going to be able to be fully acquainted with an organization's culture and an organization's values through the digital channel.
Right.
Yes, I think that revenue comment, Chris, is so spot on, because that's really what it comes down to, right? It's driving more business, it's driving profitability, and that's why when we're talking about the digital, where there is that ability to connect what you're doing from the marketing side through that revenue attribution and understand what's working. And in certain industries, when you sort of think, we mentioned retail as an example, there are brands that are out there that people just know about because they're such big brands and they've been around for so long, and that they do have a persona, they have a profile, they have a cause, they have a meaning. But when you talk about certain other industries, whatever that persona is, it's not going to be as well known by the end consumer. So they wouldn't necessarily have that automatic affiliation with them. So how do you build that? How do you really showcase and share and demonstrate this is who we are as a company? This is what we stand for. This is the value that we can deliver to you as a consumer.
I think that first piece is why to do it to begin with, right? Like why go down this road of adding additional information or value proposition around the edges of a broker's value prop. Digital gives you, I think, the ability to do that more at scale, so you can get out to more people than just doing it one-on-one with a producer or like an individual, right? You can go out with a one-to-many style of communication and have many different ways to get messages out in a consistency that you just can't do with one-on-one level of contact. But it's like, why do that? And I think that's a big question mark for a lot of brokers in particular. Why am I going to invest this money in establishing a content strategy, establishing our reasons why, to your point, Chris? And if we do that, how far down that road do we go? And when do we know if it's actually making any kind of difference in the business, writing new business or retaining business? I think that's pretty difficult, it's a pretty big pill to swallow, because it's not going to be inexpensive, to layer in a cohesive level of strategy. I'm not saying it's going to cost, millions of dollars, but, to have something that's cohesive, that actually adds some level of value to your business and, doesn't embarrass you, it's going to be, a headcount plus type of an investment, on an ongoing basis. So that's a tough one for some brokers, to swallow. And I think those that have taken maybe the first stab, how long do they give it where they say, you know what, like this online marketing and this digital presence stuff was cool. We tried it for 2 years, but do we have the wherewithal to continue that through a longer time horizon, 5, 6, 7, 10 years, to really and truly be, I guess, more digital first from a communication strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know why we see it though as, maybe you could lump it into the same industry as like real estate, for example, but I don't know why it would be that different. Like digital it's a new world, it's a new
Well,
paradigm.
if you brought it right down, if you brought it right down to commodity, I think it would be, Chris, are you going to go to a different gas station because you really like so-and-so that happens to be at the counter? First of all, you probably don't even go into the counter, but let's just pretend you were still going into the store to pay for your gas. Would you oh, you know what, I got to circle around and do a U-turn and get to the other side of the street just because Mary's at the counter and I really like her. And I know it's her business, but like at some point you're like, it's gas and I need to put
Sure.
gas in my vehicle. I don't think insurance is gas.
It's
But
not, and that's what I'm
no,
saying.
but I get that. But I'm just saying, I think that's you said the average consumer may believe that it's very commoditized, right? They don't know
Right.
what they're buying.
They don't.
So they might think it's just gas. Oh, I have to have it on my house. Who cares where I get it from? So I think to answer the question as to why, maybe this is where you're going to go, is I think the reason to do it, there's a revenue piece that you brought up, Chris, but I think they're part of the reason to do it is to really underline, well, both the broker value proposition, but also like, what is insurance? Why, you know, the types of things that you should have and communicate, basically be part of that communication process. If you thought of a car dealership, that's probably, and I hate to do that to certain insurance brokers because I think it's like almost like sad, but like, you know, Ford, for example, does a great job marketing their products. You know exactly what's going on with what you're buying between X and Y. You happen to go into a dealership, which is the broker equivalent in your area, to buy said product that you want. And I think that you probably would buy your vehicle from someone that was more knowledgeable and helped you understand. But how often do you really see, you know, the broker or the dealer in your area creating content? Well, I don't know that they need to, because the brands are doing such a good job pushing the value of their product, but you don't have that in insurance.
Which
I mean, you don't see RSA or, you know, or RSA has gone into or any of these people coming up with strong reasons why, right, to buy their product and pushing that down to the end consumer. You don't.
I do. There's a huge disconnect. It's a good point. I mean, if we're sitting here saying that the local Ford dealership isn't sitting around creating this local presence of Oakville, come to my dealership. I mean, I don't know enough about the industry. I do know somebody that does, that maybe needs to join our podcast and he would love to. And he also knows the insurance business, so he might be able to add value here. But I don't know enough about that. But you're right in the sense that Ford is doing their thing, and there's maybe more cohesive, like a more unified approach to that. When you walk in, you know you're buying a Ford, and there's all these other places where you can get the information directly from Ford, right? I don't know. How was your experience?
Chris, I feel like Chris is trying to jump in here.
Yeah.
Well, I think I like this. I like Mike bringing up this specific thing about a big brand like Ford, and how, you know, there is that sort of broker equivalent at the dealership, and I feel like where it is that we're seeing things change in retail, where the transparency is right on the digital message, and it's sort of through and through that digital message that a client is being educated about what the sort of the underlying value of this product or this company is. I think the very equivalent, and the question about whether we should do it or whether we shouldn't do it as a broker, as a car dealer, as whatever, the answer is yes, you do need to do it, because that is where the money is going. The money is going. The additional premium is being paid to organizations that are delivering that digital message to their visitors. And if the consistency between the digital visitor, that is the digital message, and the message you get at the brokerage, at the car dealer, or whatever, if that's unified, then you're going to get quicker closes, higher value closes, higher profitability. Everyone's going to be happy, right through to Ford or Intact or whoever it is. So, like, I think that you know, it is clear. Now, how long of a game is it? So, to Mike's point of, how long do you kind of invest, and what do you invest in order to get that message out there? You know, that I know is kind of like, you know, not everybody has an unlimited sort of like bank account to kind of, you know,
Right.
refine that digital message for everyone. But I'll say this, it's not the whole world. So if you're a broker or you're a car dealer, pick your audience, message that audience. That's the one that you need to message. And that's, I think, the thing that sometimes gets lost. It's like, you don't have to sell everybody, but you have to decide who you're going to sell, and you have to go after that with that message that's going to resonate. And that's where marketing is the payoff. Like, that's where you've got to invest in that marketing message digitally, on the floor, all the way around, to make it really, really super clear. If you are going after that millennial audience, then you have got to understand that they are going to pick up that message digitally. If they don't get your message digitally, you're not going to get them.
Yep.
So Chris, I'm going to go back to one of the points you made about, and I think I understood this properly, talking about, that experience that you have in that face-to-face and replicating that digitally. So absolutely, You need to know who the audience is. But if you think of it sort of drawing on that line, and we take it back to the broker. So when a broker has a conversation with a prospect or with an existing customer, and they have that conversation where they can ask a specific question, oh, you just renovated your basement. Well, this is some advice. Did you know that, we might have to add additional coverage because of this? Did you take photos so that the unseen renovations, we actually have proof that there's coverage? So how do you take that? Because that is such a valuable conversation.
Right.
So if you're able to communicate that is totally worth it. So taking that and communicating that digitally, and that is, there's so much value in doing that. It's not like you're flipping a switch and saying, yeah, I'll just take that conversation and put that personal face and get it out in digital. But there are ways to do that. And I think, when Jen and I were talking about this is sort of a little bit of the premise of the starting point of this, is how do we take that personal, that advice, that value, and we showcase that in digital, because that is a differentiator. That is something that people are saying, you know what, that's worth my extra time, potentially worth paying a premium for, because there's value in that. And that also adds that differentiator between broker A and broker B, because one of them is actually saying, I'm going to help you and give this advice to you, and the other one is not.
And that goes back to what Chris is saying. It doesn't have to be everybody. That's obvious. There are products, and there are a need for those products that are commoditized, but there's also a whole slew of other products that isn't so cookie cutter and needs that advice and attention that is usually given by the front line.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say where the sale is going to come from, Chris, and I agree that there's a certain type of shopper, and probably more and more of them, that are going to experience your ads, more likely to experience your ads digitally than they are on a radio, on a flyer, on a what?
A billboard, a bus. Right?
Yeah, it's exactly, that's what I was thinking. Some of the more traditional mediums that they may have seen it in the past. Obviously, a lot cheaper to throw a digital ad, especially when you're narrowing that audience, to your point. And now it's about, what does the ad say, and all that angle. I think more is to be done there, because I don't think on this podcast we've got extensive knowledge of the attrition rates of various brokers' books and the growth rates and certain age ranges, but they would certainly know, in terms of the business that they're writing and the business that they're losing. But we did grab this retail study that was done ahead of this podcast to sort of see what's going on in the retail space, because this one study talked about, was done by IBM and NRF, of close to 20,000 shoppers. And it suggested that people will pay a premium, consumers will pay a premium when brands are are more aligned with their shoppers' purposes, whether that, and that comes through content. So that could be, eco-driven purposes, or, other types of purpose-driven approaches to shopping that they proved out that, upwards of 35% premiums can be paid. And I agree with that. Like, I think that, at the end of the day, people's wallets vote, as we said earlier, because all sounds good, but if they end up just taking the cheapest policy, then it's not actually working. But I think that brokers would agree as well, that when they get a customer that is aligned and they're able to spend some time with them to talk about those additional coverages and why they're important and what they need for their individual situation, that you write more business, and
Right.
they're fine to, customers are usually happy to pay for that type of thing. So I would say that that's probably the next side of the conversation is once you're in that mode, is really measuring, the impact of your marketing and, your return on ad spend and your overall marketing investment and in relationship to the business that you're writing. And I guess,
usually,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Mike. I was just going to say it's not always like a complete shift. So we're talking to some brokers right now. Jen knows. We're talking to a few brokers right now where they've got let's call it like an older book. Okay, so they've been in business for 60 years. They have built a business on the things that were building business in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, which is, really good, thoughtful service, community service, and all that kind of stuff. And now their book really leans more towards, retirement age. Like it's not all that, but it's largely that. And then maybe they have a sprinkling of sort of younger clients, but they see more and more that the growth is really not there. Retention, it's dropping off because, well, quite frankly, people are like checking out. Yeah, well, downsizing and dying, right? So it's like you've got that sort of like, drop in overall growth because your messaging is really not been updated. So the idea to kind of tiptoe in, it's not a bad idea to tiptoe into an area, pick a product, tiptoe into that area with with some messaging that is consistent with, like, you're targeting and that's the way to do it. Target that sort of area that maybe is a little bit underserved. Can you figure out an area that's underserved? Yes, you can. You just need to have an organization to partner with that can help identify what is being underserved. Then you can sort of develop that messaging. These days, getting a digital message, sort of like the persona creation, getting some very, very attractive kind of visuals. This is not like a really expensive thing to do. Is there expense involved? For sure. But it's like once you've got that identified sort of area and you introduce that transparency, introduce the fact that you know what you're talking about, this is where the new insurance buyer, new whatever buyer, is going to be really engaged, because they're going to be looking for somebody that is giving me the information that I need to make a good decision. And that is something that can be fully created digitally. And then you have that, that's I think the ability to kind of not have to transform everything all at once, but to explore that sort of area to get it started.
It's a very strategic approach, right? Because you're figuring out a need, right? As you said, underserved, and then you're really focusing on that very specific area, and you're doing everything all the way down to your investing, that you're making these strategic decisions. You're not just wildly saying, well, I'm just going to spend on everything, or I'm going to spend on nothing. And you're going to be more successful when you do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that was kind of the thrust of it. I mean, I think we all are consumers at the end of the day. And, I think the gas station example was, not a good one, but I think when you really want to commoditize something down to just putting gas in your vehicle, I guess you could, some people might feel that insurance falls into that category. It's just gas in my vehicle. And maybe there's situations where that's true, but I think they'd be pretty few and far between situations where that's true,
I think more so now too. I mean, we've even seen a shift with the brokers that we work with from a year and a half ago to how the content strategy has changed to more trust building content and way more of it versus this fast, simple.
Well, you'd think of most of the content in this, and it made me think about, content generally and the types of content that we're involved with, but just how underserved the industry really is from a content perspective. We know, there's one major provider of content out of the US that many of them subscribe to and all use the same content, albeit most of it's US oriented, and then they try to regurgitate it. And then there's another one coming up through one of the other big BMS providers that also has some content that you can grab and use. And you're right. It's pretty sad,
it's
when
not
you
authentic.
it's not authentic. And, I think some of it is probably okay. Certain types of technical content that, you may not necessarily need to sort of reinvent the wheel on, but you're right. It's not authentic. And but
it goes to the sorry, Mike. It goes to the shift that has taken place, even in the last 5 years. I would say it used to be you needed enough content to get somebody to give you a call. Okay, you get the customer on the call, and now the salesperson is going to be able to identify what the pain point is and close the deal. That would be that 5 years ago. That was now. They're not looking to talk to a salesperson. Okay, they don't want to. They don't want to talk to sales. What they want to do is they want to pick up the information they need to basically make a good decision. They want the information that they need to make the decision online. I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying that's the direction. If people aren't already there, and this actually is not just insurance. I mean, I'm speaking generally, but insurance is true. It's true that people are looking for, as Jen was saying before, am I going to be caught? Am I going to be caught because this content is basically letting me know that they've got me at, they know nothing about me, but this is the rate that they have for me. They don't know what I have in my backyard. They don't know what I have in my front yard. They don't know what I have in my basement, but they're basically quoting me a rate. First of all, that's not helping me. So can I basically learn about what an organization is going to do for me if there's a problem? Is that something that I'm going to need to understand? What kind of information are they actually providing me to help me feel really comfortable about making a move?
Yeah. And that content we're talking, right? The fact that they're sharing all this content, that content is going to be more at the coverage level. It can't possibly speak to what that particular broker delivers from a service perspective, right? That can only come from the broker voice, and that's what the differentiator is. And it could be the language, the tone. It could be something that indicates that they're local, because we know local is a really big driver for making a connection. So those are all those aspects that it can really only come from the brand voice. And yes, that does mean it's a little bit more work, because we know that investing in your own content is, but that's where you're going
and that's why some of them have different brands. That's why I think we're seeing so many that have decided to, either at a product level or at a demographic level, spun out, because to your point, Chris, earlier, they spun out a different brand to try to tackle this. It's very difficult to be all things to all people, to take a 60-year-old brokerage that, grew probably largely, over X number of years. And a lot of that growth probably came, years ago, to now try to pivot all of those different demographics, all those different audiences, and be relevant, to potentially each of them. Right. So I'm not saying the right move is to grab a different brand. And I think that you do need to make hard decisions on who you're going to go after. But there's an element to that too, where to say, like, if you're trying to go after the millennial who's looking for, condo and pet insurance and a bunch of these kind of lightweight products that are kind of easy to consume and potentially even purchase online, but you're also trying to go to a you know, a multi-home family,
Yeah.
family that's got a cottage and 3 vehicles,
Yeah.
you know, that could be very hard to do
Right.
under one
Especially
brand.
under
right?
one brand. And
Right.
we've seen that, Robin, how many times where it's a totally different message. It's totally different focus. It requires an entirely different content strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you say in one conversation, we take the time to sit down with you, really understand your needs, and at the same time, but if you don't ever want to talk to us, we can do this all digitally. You can't say that in one message, right? You can't be can't be all things to all people.
Yeah, for sure.
Hard stuff.
Okay,
though.
well, this is a new style of podcast, which I guess is the discussion kind of podcast. I really don't
Basically
know.
talking about cheap gas. We're talking about cheap gas and
dealerships. I feel bad about that. Somebody's going to be like, we're not a car dealership. It's not on the same level. You know what? Those car dealership guys, they make a lot of money. So
Michael knows because he just bought a truck. Okay. And that was a performance.
Right. Yeah. So they make money. So I don't know that's not a bad thing.
Nothing wrong with gas. Nothing wrong with vehicles.
Well, gas was low. That was a low blow. Gas was a low blow, right?
Gas is a bit tough. Like my husband basically gives me where I should fill up with gas. So maybe gas is not the commodity that everybody.
You're going to get a content strategy from your local gas station, and that's going to sway you. I don't think so. Okay.
It's the car wash though. They throw in the
car washes. Car washes. You might be right about that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
don't know. Maybe if you had, maybe if you had like a Slurpee.
It's not a commodity. There's something different at the car wash. And I think that's what we're saying. We're saying, you know, from insurance is not a commodity, but in order to make sure that the end consumer understands that, there has to be that content and that value proposition. So insurance is not a gas station.
Correct.
No, unless you're selling popcorn at the gas station.
Popcorn or car wash. So I go to the best car wash. It's the gas station attached to the best car wash. That's for me. So.
All right.
Okay, this is a good format. I really like it. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.